Hey guys, I've got a bunch of welding tips and tricks for you today, and I've got about 10 years worth of awesome products to help you guys get started into welding. Also, I've got two MIG welders going here, one running argon gas, one running Fluxcore. We'll take a look at the difference between both of those if you guys are in the market for buying a welder. Stay tuned. Alright, so you'll notice that most of this stuff is from Harbor Freight, and that's not a bad thing. You want to put almost all your money into a really good welder, and then these consumables don't matter as much. I mean, you want things to be square, but for the most part, these are pretty good things, especially coming from Harbor Freight. The very first one here that I really enjoy is this MIG torch rest. It's got an extremely powerful magnet on the end of it, and it works really well. You just set your torch in there, and it holds it, and it does an excellent job. Another thing is a grinder. You can get grinding wheels, or you can get cutoff discs, both go in the same one. It works excellent. You'll need that definitely for sure. A slag hammer is definitely something you're going to need. If you're doing Fluxcore, you'll want to come back and kind of chip that off, make sure your welds are looking okay. When it comes to clamps, definitely get something like these. Sometimes you'll need to tighten up the metal so it'll bend into place, or maybe you're just clamping it. You just want it to hold there so you can tack it and get started welding. Definitely get something like this because these are both metal and they won't melt. If you get something made of plastic, the metal gets pretty hot and it'll melt them pretty quickly. These magnets work really good. You've got a 90 and a 45 on these, and they do an excellent job for that. You'll need some side cuts. Sometimes you'll accidentally hit the button on your MIG gun and it'll shoot out a bunch of wire. You'll have to snip that off so you can get it back closer to where you need to be. A good welding brush is definitely something you need to clean up the welds. Sometimes you kind of rub that over the welds and clean them up. And probably one of the most important things to keep from getting burned is a good pair of gloves. Now we've gone through probably 5 or 6 pairs of gloves trying to find a good one. I just recently bought these off of Amazon and they're amazing. Just go out there and look for one that have, you know, the most stars on them. That's usually how I find the best kind of stuff, but definitely a good pair of welding gloves will make you go a long way. Got a couple other products here. Got a yellow paint marker. I was hoping it was actually going to be white. I got it from Harbor Freight, but you can see it. It's a little bit harder to see, but you'll need something because most things won't mark on metal very well. So a couple other things that came back from FabTech. Haven't got to use those, but a lot of people do use them. This one's a nozzle dip, and it's made by Weld. We'll take a look at it here. And it's kind of like a goo in there. Basically what you do is when you're welding and your tip is hot, you'll stick it down in there, and then you'll shake out the nozzle and get all the rest of that stuff out of there. But it just kind of keeps the consumables clean, and that way you don't go through them so fast and doesn't burn up everything. Another thing made by Weld is this the little contacts that you put on top of your wire. You put the red one first, and that cleans the wire. Then this kind of gray one, it'll actually come back and it'll lube the wire so it goes through the gun a lot easier. Again, I haven't used these before, but I've talked to a lot of people that do use them. The way that works is the wire just slips in there. You can see the cut in it. So you'll put that on whenever you put on a new spool. And these last probably about 4 rolls of wire is what I was told. So anyway, that's something definitely useful for welding. Another thing here that has definitely been one of my favorites, probably out of all these things, is this fire resistant. This is made by Carhartt, but it's this just a big oversized shirt, and it's got long sleeves on it, and it works extremely well. I've had lots of splatters. I've been working with this for the last couple weeks, and I haven't got burned once. And I'll be honest, I usually just throw on a long shirt, but the little splatters will actually burn through your shirt pretty quickly. I haven't had any problems with this. So it's an expensive shirt. It's about $60, but I 100% promise that after you wear this, compared to all the other shirts you've ever worn, it definitely pays for itself. And I've no longer had any more burns on my arms where it splatters and goes through your shirt. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the helmets, and then we'll get into the welders and we'll go from there. When it comes to welding helmets, we've got 2 here, both sides of the spectrum. Now I've been pretty happy with all the Harbor Freight stuff. This one's a Harbor Freight helmet. This one's a Cobalt helmet I got at Lowe's. This one, it's okay. I wouldn't buy it again, but it got us through because that's how much money we had at the time. Got a nice solar panel up here. It's got a fairly small window. I believe it's only got 2 sensors that it's sensing the arc when you start welding. You got your controls of your brightness there. You've got a sensitivity of low and high and a delay time of slow and fast. And that's about all it's got. You got your battery right here. Overall, it's okay. It's pretty dark in there. It's hard to see what you're doing. I moved up to this one, much larger window as you can tell. really enjoy that. You can just absolutely see everything you're doing, and I don't have to keep popping the helmet up because on that one I don't know what I'm doing. I can barely see out it, and it's so dark in there. This one's got 4 sensors to identify when you've started welding, and it appears you've got some solar there as well. Going over here on the back, you've got your sensitivity dial, you've got a delay dial, and then these are the different brightnesses that you want to put in the settings. So you got your battery there. Over here you can control if you want to put it on grinder mode, which is kind of nice. I've been doing some grinding with it, and it works really well. And then this also controls your brightness of how dark it is and how bright it is when you're welding. Overall, I would definitely suggest paying a few more dollars, getting a better helmet. Lincoln makes a Viking one. It's just a little bit smaller, but I don't know the difference. I'd like to do a review on that. I've reached out to Lincoln, but maybe we'll see a review on that in the future. But for now, go with a better helmet. You'll be much happier, and your welding experience will be a lot more fun. All right, another thing you're gonna need for welding is a welding table. Now, again, I got this one at Harbor Freight, and I'm pretty impressed with it. Over here on the sides, we can actually loosen it, and you can tip the table. Another cool thing is it's got sides here to help you align your pieces up, so if you want to make those straight. And overall, it's been a really nice table, and didn't cost a whole lot of money, so definitely something if you want to get started. A table like this works great. All right, I've got 2 MIG welders here in front of you. Now then, this is a PowerMate 70 wire feed welder made by Century. Lincoln has since bought out Century, so they now control all of the manuals and stuff like that if you want to get with them. This one is a Fluxcore only, will not take gas, argon, so it will only do Fluxcore. And then this one is a Pro MIG 140. It's made by Lincoln Electric. It's been bought within the last 10 years. We bought it brand new. This one can take Fluxcore and it can take argon gas. You would just switch out the Fluxcore wire and then put in the argon gas wire, and then you can run that, so it's an either or. Over here to this one, I'll show you some of the quick controls. You can just see how the limited controls. This is obviously an older one. You've got your normal settings for your wire speed. We've got the heat selector is either high or low, and we found that high is pretty much what you have to have it on the whole entire time. Low is pretty much worthless. Another thing on these older welders is when you've got, like, let's say, I'll kind of back this out and show you the handle. Let's say this is a piece of metal, and you put your ground clamp on that, and the nozzle, if it were just to touch it and you don't squeeze the trigger, it'll automatically start welding. So these older models, you don't actually have to squeeze the trigger. It's just kind of the setting that came with the older models. Let's go ahead and try that now, and I'll just kind of go just straight down there, and I'm now blinded by the light. Now then, that doesn't happen on this newer model. You actually have to squeeze the trigger when you've got your ground clamp on the metal, so just to give you an idea of if you ever see that. On these settings, we've got wire feed and speed knob here, 1 to 10, and then your voltage heat, A to E, so A being a thinner piece of metal and E being your thickest metal. If you do put it on E and let's say it's 12 gauge metal, you will blow through it, so usually we back it off to about D, and that seems to work pretty good on this. Today we're running argon on this. I'll kind of zoom out so you guys can see the argon tank. We will be running argon on this, so you guys can see the difference between running an argon welder MIG and a Fluxcore welder MIG. A benefit that I really like about both of these are they're both 110, so it's just a standard outlet in your garage or shop. You don't have to have anything special. Now, some of the welders actually will go up to like 220, so you'll have to have a special outlet run in your shop, but these are perfect for just around the house and stuff like that, so they make a great welder for that. Alright, so today I'm going to be practicing on these. These are 5 weld-it-yourself 3-inch cube kits from Richard Day from 42 Fab. It's a piece of metal like this, and you take it and you bend it. He has plasma cut these into the shape so you can practice with them, and you just bend it like this until it's into this orientation. When you get it perfect, you come back and you do a tack weld here on these, and then you'll go ahead and you'll weld down the inseams of these. Then you'll do the outside as well. When you get done, you put them together like this, and it turns it into a cube. I've gone ahead and made one of these, and then I just went ahead with a grinder and I've ground it all down, and it looks really cool. But there's a lot of lines to practice on inside and outside, so it's a great way to practice. So today we'll go ahead and get started with the Fluxcore, and I'll show you what it looks like with that machine. Alright, so That is actually not a bad weld right there. So let's go ahead and get out the hammer and kind of chip that off and see what it looks like. As you can see here, I had some issues here getting started. We were trying to find the speeds and feeds, and then finally I got it working, and I just went back and forth, touching both plates back and forth, just rocking it back and forth all the way until I got it there. So that weld came out okay. It was touching both ends of it, and that would be a pretty strong weld. So let's go ahead and try another one here.
I noticed some of the close-up shots of me welding was pretty bright on camera, so I've saved everyone's eyes and toned them down with throwing my logo in front of them.
Alright, let's see how that one turned out. Again, it was a line and then a circle and then a line and then a circle. I think that would be an okay weld. Maybe not the prettiest, but you know, for doing what we're trying to do here today and weld these together, I think it's a fairly decent weld, so we'll continue on. Alright, so a tip for the very best weld is the one that goes straight down. So I'll show you that tip now. Now then, you also want to make sure that you've already welded on the back. If you try doing this and you haven't welded from the back, most likely it'll blow through. So if you stay in one spot, you'll have to keep moving if you don't. But I'm just going to do a straight down the line weld, and this should be the best looking weld that you can do. Again, another key feature and tip when doing this is we want to hit it straight on. If I were to hit it from an angle, then I'm kind of shooting out against and not really lining up both of these. So we want to make sure that I'm getting both of them in the weld at the same time. So go at it straight on. So it's a good tip. Something that I had to learn the other day. Alright, so overall, it's not a very pretty weld. They'll be a little bit thicker than they are on the inside, but you can come back and you can grind that off. And if a little bit of practice, I can make this a little bit smaller, a little faster, a little thinner. But overall, not a bad weld. So let's go ahead and switch over to the Argon, and you can see the difference between a Fluxcore weld and an Argon. It should be a little bit prettier, not so much buildup. We've kind of got this one dialed in, and we'll go from there, and then you guys can see the difference. Alright, let's go ahead and switch over to the Pro MIG 140 by Lincoln. I've already gone ahead and turned on my Argon tank, and if you're ever using Argon and you forget to turn it on and you're trying to weld and it's looking horrible, it's probably because you forgot to turn on the gas. It will literally not have any shielding and it'll look absolutely horrid, so that's something to look for if it's looking weird. Another thing is I put my wire speed at 3 and we've got it on D, not the hottest setting, second hottest. This is about where it likes it on the 12 gauge I found for what I'm doing today. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. Alright, so take a look at the difference on this one versus the Fluxcore that we've previously done. I mean, the quality of it is just way better. And what I looked like me doing on the Fluxcore earlier, didn't know what I was doing. Well, a lot of you professional welders probably saying the same thing, but I mean, this really did a nice job of touching both sides and looking really nice. So let's go ahead and do it again here on the other side and see what that one looks like. Alright, now hopefully you guys heard the difference. The wire was going so fast that it was popping a lot. So you'll notice here, I'll show you my tool here. So you'll notice here the sound. Right here is where I stopped and it was just popping like crazy.
Starting from the right, I had the wire feed set at 3 and I was moving too slow and you started hearing the popping. You'll notice the blowout it did, but once I got it dialed in and set to 2, the weld really came out nice. This is something you have to dial in on each project, and there's typically a guide under the door of the welder for each metal thickness.
We'll just do a straight line down this. No circles, just straight down the line. Again, when we're doing this, we just want to make sure that we're in line with it, so we're getting both pieces of the metal. So I'll go ahead and show you how to do that now. Alright, again, this is probably going to be about the prettiest welds you guys are going to see.
I wanted to take a close-up of this weld, and you can see the straight line I did a great job of touching both plates and laying a very nice long bead. Also, you'll notice that Argon is a prettier weld with less splatter than the Fluxcore.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do another weld. And this one 42 Fab calls the Gangster Weave.
It's the one and only Digo Double G.
And basically we're just gonna go back and forth, rocking it back and forth across this. So I'll go ahead and try that one now. This is like a really robust, beefy weld. It would be one of those things that you would never break. He showed it to me the other day. Pretty cool. It's using a lot of material, but very strong, stronger than the metal that it's on. This one I didn't weld behind it. Nothing was ever welded back there, so you got to be careful not to stop in one spot or accidentally you'll burn through it. So another very cool one. You know, obviously a lot less metal just going straight down in a line, but weaving back and forth, you're really touching both these plates, and that's going to be a really strong weld. Alright, with some better lighting here, let's go ahead and take a look at what these welds look like. Again, this is the Fluxcore, and I did a weld across here the best I could. And it doesn't look too bad. It's not the prettiest weld in the world, but you know, I've done a pretty good job of trying to get both pieces, you know, centered up right there, so we're getting a good heat on both of those pieces of metal. Flipping it over here, you can see the inside, and you'll notice one thing. There's a lot of splatter that happens in here. And these little balls, they don't want to come off. They're really stuck on there well. The weld here isn't too bad. You notice I kind of did a little swerve there. But overall, it's okay for a Fluxcore, right? I mean, not a professional. This one, it's okay. It's kind of hard to see. I tried chipping it away so it looked better. This one was probably not very good. Starting out, I was having a little trouble getting the heat right, and I messed with the wire feed until I finally got it going, and then finally that really came out pretty nice right there. So overall, it's what you're going to expect out of Fluxcore if you buy a Fluxcore welder. Even that nice MIG one, it'll do the same thing. Let's go ahead and take a look at this Argon. Alright, so on this one we just did a straight line down pretty fast, and that isn't a bad weld. It's pretty clean, and you'll notice there's not very much splatter here. There's one little tiny dot there. Other than that, this thing is just super duper clean. So the Argon doesn't have the splatter like the Fluxcore does. You'll notice here that this is what 42 Fab named the Gangster Weave.
It's the one and only Digo Double G.
And basically I was just going back and forth like crazy, touching both those pieces, not trying to stay in one spot too long. But he was saying that would make a really strong weld. At that point, it's now stronger than the piece of metal, so it would be hard to break. We'll flip it over here and take a look on the inside. And these welds actually came out pretty good. This one here, I'm pretty impressed with. You can notice something going on here. I noticed it does have a little hole here, so we've blown through it accidentally. Hard to see here on the back, but you can see light through that little tiny hole. So 42 Fab came to the shop, like I mentioned a couple times. Check him out. He's got a whole fabrication channel. He does a lot of welding and plasma cutting stuff, and that's where I got these cubes from. These are some of his welds. So if you want to compare with a really good weld, this is what he did, and this was on the MIG using Argon. Here he was kind of playing with it, but like a weld like that, hopefully one day I'll get to that point, but you know, that's what a professional welder would do. So, show you some more here real quick of what you could expect if you had Argon. Again, another one of his welds. They just look really nice. So, he was showing us different methods. Circles, or a circle and a straight line, or just doing a straight line. Just pulling it. Looks like he blew through here, but, you know, overall, grading these, they just look really nice. Look how even that is right across that. So, again, these are just some of the things that you can do with an argon gas welder on MIG. And again, this is just 110. We asked him, what about putting a bolt on there? How would you do that? And he came back and he was just going back and forth, touching the bolt and back and forth. And then he came back and then he put another layer of this weld over top of it. So he's doubled it up here. And
you know, the bolt isn't going to go anywhere. He's got a lot of weld on there. It actually caused the back of this plate to warp out a little bit. You can see it kind of burning through here. And yeah, it was pretty neat. So again, that's the difference between Fluxcore and Argon. Hopefully you guys learned something. Anyway, subscribe, check me out on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram. I do a lot of funny things over there, and I'm doing a lot of other projects over there. So anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Who am I? Well, I'm the Gangster Weave, like it says on the nameplate. It's my prison name. Me? No, I've never been to prison. Nope, I got that name from Martha Stewart when I visited her there at the prison. Yeah, my grandma, she's 86, took her to the World Series in 2004, and she decided she'd try streaking, and she got out on the field, but they tackled her pretty quick. The walker kind of slowed her down, but she was roommates with Martha there after that, and now Martha actually taught me how to do the Gangster Weave. She was explaining it's just like doing big arches across, you know, rainbows, windshield wipers, you know what I'm talking about. But they didn't have welders there in prison. That's contraband. So Martha was showing us that you could get the electric fence and you get 2 electrodes off of it, and they'd pull the wires out of the mattresses, and they would electrocute that, and then it would just weld. And I mean, everything that lady touched just turned to gold. But proof I was there? Well, she made me something. Hang on one second. She made me this. Came out really good, and it's near and dear to my heart. But it's a dog, and you can tell she put some time into this. You know, the lady is just, you know. Hang on one second. She signed it for me. She signed it right here, and this goes along with it. Martha Stewart, November 1st, 2004. So, yeah, so that's how I got my name, the Gangster Weave. So, I got to meet Martha. It was a good time. Martha used to like to play a trick on the guards. She'd yell out, "Desk pop!" My pants don't hang low because of choice. It's because of all the everyday carries I carry. We got the full auto, the plier, you know. We got the Rambo. Don't forget the holy hand grenade. Oh yeah, also nice swallowing stick. Oh, and for the kids, yeah, marshmallows later. Alright guys, I'm giving away the Gangster Weave chain. The way you win it is subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Instagram channel. Leave me a comment down below, and you guys are entered to win that. Also check out my boy 42 Fab. He makes these very cool weld-it-yourself kits, like these cubes, and he's also making some rocket stoves right here, you can see. And he's also doing some other very cool things. He's making a chimney. I've got a video coming on that very soon, so stay tuned. Thank you guys for watching. You guys have a great day. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.